wondering, I was interested to ask, I mean, you were talking about how you gradually started to learn about Islamic law and Islamic Sharia. I'm just wondering, how does that fit with your work? Because does that create some sort of conflict? Or?
The Sharia judge asked me this question.
Oh, really? Okay.
Very interesting. We had a delegation of our most senior judges out to Pakistan recently, because we've signed bilateral agreements with them about returning children and matters of this sort. And before they arrived, the Sharia judges in Pakistan read our Children's Act. And when they arrived, they said there is nothing in your law that contradicts anything in Sharia law.
Yeah.
There is no difficulties about that.
It's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize. You know, people that have studied Western law and Islamic law, just so much of law is rooted in common sense. It's rooted in very rational principles. I mean, the majority of Islamic law. In fact, I think a lot of Western people, when they study Islamic marital laws, are actually shocked at how progressive a lot of the laws are. I mean, that's more...
You're smiling. That means you've studied it?
I have been studying it.
Yeah, I see the smile.
I've recently spoken to a female professor of Sharia law at Lahore University and a female professor of law, Professor Ali, at Warwick University here, who was Minister for Women's Development in Pakistan, but she's an English professor of law. They both told me within 3 weeks the same story, that when they lecture on Sharia family law, particularly the rights that women have, the demands they can make for their nikah contract, the male students all say, you're making this up.
No, they don't believe it.
This is the male Muslim students.
Yeah.
You're making this up. You're only saying this to please the girls.
Yeah.
Would you prefer to have somebody that decided to marry another woman as a husband, you decided to marry another woman, or would you rather have somebody that is just married to you but perhaps has extramarital affairs that you don't know about?
I'd rather someone was married to me and stayed with me and have no extramarital affairs.
Ooh, that is a hard question.
Never thought about that.
No, never.
Well, you mean cheating or actually knowing about it? Well, if I found out that I was with somebody that was cheating, I just wouldn't be with them. And I think it's totally wrong. I can't see why they should have 4 wives. Why? You know, to me, marriage is like love and trust and, you know, all that.
What do you think about polygamy just in general?
I mean, as long as women are happy to be like in this kind of relations, I think it's fine. But if they kind of want just like one man, and then I think it's wrong. And I think if men can do that, that women can do that as well. So one woman can have like few guys. Well, so I don't know.
Well, I wanted to ask you, when we were, talking about legal systems, we spoke about other countries that maybe didn't allow the woman to come forth for her rights because she was scared in some way that she may have other rights taken away from her.
Look at legal systems throughout the world, and really, it isn't a question of the laws you have.
Yes,
it's a question of whether men or women feel able to access those courts.
You know,
the courts have to be.
Yeah.
And when
I'm
the
really
judge asked me last week, when he said to me about the value of women judges, I said, you know, it's not when women are judges in a system. It's not the fact that you may appear before a women judge, but if there are women judges, women feel more comfortable with that system generally because they feel it's going to be more women friendly, if that's the case. But it may be a case in certain countries that women will only want to go to other women judges because they will feel comfortable with that.
Reconciliation, I mean, in conflict theory, it's the most difficult thing is getting the one side to see the other person's side and the other person to see the other. You have to be able to get outside of yourself, which is really a difficult thing to do.
Because that's a strong word, the shuh, you know.
Yeah, shuh is
we've recognized, and going to law is the failure. If anybody gets to me, there's been a failure.
Yes.
And we've recognized
this. If anybody gets to you, sorry, I didn't get
if you actually have to get to me as a family law judge,
with
you failed.
I see. Yeah.
And I actually regard any case that actually fights in front of me as a failure, because at every stage, even if it gets to me as the court, I will do everything I can to get that couple to negotiate and to settle either on their own or with help from advisors. And we've now made this the central tenet of our whole family law system, whether it's about money or divorce or the children, that we do everything to help that couple and that family to at least come to an agreement, if they can't be reconciled as a family, to come to agreements about those issues. Now, I think what we very much need while we're developing that is that we need a system certainly throughout the United Kingdom, that Muslim families have got somewhere safe and appropriate and neutral
and they can do that.
they can go to, where so law should be the last resort.
It's surgery.
Yeah.
But,
but we don't have that, and I'm hoping...
The Jewish community does have it.
They have a wonderful system.
Yeah.
I was going to ask
feel
you.
full rights there. They feel safe to go there.
And they use their halakha law.
They use it for contracts. They use it any disputes in the
I mean, that's the beauty of
status.
We have the same thing in the U.S. that you can actually set up. They're like people's courts where people sign an agreement and then it becomes legally binding.
Yes.
They have to take the arbitrator's decision.
But throughout this country, we have women who are trained lawyers, often because of hijab, are not working because they have difficulty getting into firms.
Oh, really?
Who could take part in this process.
Yeah.
Why aren't they working? Just discrimination.
And we've seen that. What's interesting is we've seen that in every country we've been to.
Yeah.
We've had women complain to us that they can't get jobs wearing the hijab. And I met a woman in one of the Arab countries. I could tell she was a devout woman just from her face. And so I was surprised she didn't have hijab on. And then as we were leaving, she said to me, "I'm really thinking about quitting this job." And I said, "Why?" And she says, "Because right when I get to the door, I take off my hijab. And when I finish my job, right when I get to the door, I put it back on because they won't allow me to wear the hijab. And you know, this is what I was trained in, and in this field in our country, you can't get a job wearing the hijab." And I was so distressed to hear that. You know, what humiliation to be in a Muslim country. I mean, it's one thing in the UK where people are just unaccustomed to this, but to be in a Muslim country where you can't wear a hijab.
I've gone through a real issue with girls who've said this to me. I mean, should I say to them? Because in England, once you had the job, they could never sack you. And in fact, once you had the job and you wore your hijab, people would get used to it within a week or so, and that would be the end of it. So therefore, should I advise these girls, highly qualified girls, who can't get jobs because of it, and they can never prove of that, because there are 200 applicants for every job anyway, take it off for the interview and put it back on next week when you've got the job. Now that's a real moral dilemma, because do we need those women in those positions, in those firms, and once they're there and they're
that's called a nazila.
I was going to ask you, what is this?
That is a nazila.
I don't know what to say to
a nazila. I mean, that is a nazila, and that's where you would really need somebody like Sheikh Ali Juma or Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, somebody at that level that could really be able to take that. I mean, I wouldn't want the responsibility of saying, I could have an opinion, but I don't want the responsibility of...
We'll have to put you through to Sheikh Ali Juma. We met him in Egypt. He's wonderful,
Again, Judge Marilyn, it's always wonderful to see you, and I'm really happy with, you know, I actually feel just very honored to have people like you coming into Islam and honoring the community. The Prophet ﷺ made a dua about Sayyidina Umar, Allahumma a'izz al-Islam bi ahad al-Umarain, you know, make Islam strong with one of the Umars. And it was Umar ibn al-Khattab that Allah chose to answer that prayer. But it's one of the things that strengthens Islam. We're strengthened by Islam, but it's also Islam is strengthened by strong people. So it's really good to have such a strong, like Bodicea. You know, we were going to do this by the statue of Bodicea, the great Celtic female warrior that fought the Romans. So, you know, may you be a Bodicea of Islam, inshallah.
Well, Sheikh Hamza, I owe so much to you, and I only hope as one of your students I can in any way, even 1%, repay what you have given to me.
Thank you. It's been a
thank you so much, really.
That's walking down the street.
That you're following your faith.
Do you think oppression enters your mind at all?
No. A lot of Muslim women who I've met have actually been quite free. But that is, I mean, that's